students, welcome to my live teaching learning session of BECC 131, and today's topic is elasticity of demand. We have done meaning of demand and scarcity and problem of choice in this BECC 131 microeconomics paper. Now today we will discuss about elasticity of demand. What is the meaning of elasticity and how it is connected with demand? What are the determinant factors of elasticity of demand, and what types of elasticity of demand exist in the economy, and why it is very important for the economy? So all these topics we will cover in this unit 3, elasticity of demand. So first of all, we must have to know about what is the meaning of elasticity. Elasticity means that thing which can change. If anything can be changeable, that is the meaning of elasticity. So elasticity is a measure of a variable sensitivity to a change in another variable. If we have two variables like x and y, if x is changing due to change in y, it means that x variable is elastic. If x is not changing due to change in y, it means x variable is inelastic. If x is changing but not by the same proportion of y, it means x is relatively less elastic. And if x is more changing rather than the change in y variable, it means x is more elastic. So any variable sensitivity, if we want to measure according to the change in another variable, that is called elasticity. The most commonly referring to demand as affected by other factors. You know that what is the meaning of demand? Demand refers to the quantity of a commodity which a consumer is willing to buy at a particular price at a given time period. And demand can be elastic, can be inelastic. If our demand can be changed according to the change in price, it means our demand is elastic. If our demand can't change, then demand will be called inelastic. Demand can be changed due to change in price level, due to change in income of the consumer, and due to change in price of other commodities or related goods. Related goods may be substitute, may be complementary. So demand can change due to change in so many other factors. If demand can change, demand will be called elastic. If there is no change in demand due to change in other factors, in this case, demand will be called inelastic. Like thread and rubber band. Rubber band is more elastic and thread is inelastic. You can't increase or decrease the size of thread, but you can change the rubber band. So, rubber band has elasticity, but thread has no elasticity. Same as if product is necessary, then we will definitely demand for that product. Either its price rises or falls, our income rises or falls, because necessary product is very compulsory for survival. So necessary product demand remains always inelastic. But if commodity is luxurious or if commodity is for comfortable, then its demand may be changed due to change in price of the product and due to change in income of the consumer. So if demand can change, that will be called elastic, and if demand can't change according to the change in other factors, then demand will be called inelastic. So elasticity generally refers to a measure of variable sensitivity to a change in another variable. Now next is elasticity has three types. There are three types of elasticity. One is price elasticity of demand. Second is cross elasticity of demand. And third is income elasticity of demand. It means generally we can classify elasticity into three broad categories. One is price elasticity of demand, second is cross elasticity of demand. Cross elasticity of demand is generally related with price of related goods. Price elasticity of demand related to price of the commodity. And income elasticity of demand is related with income of the consumer. So all these three types of elasticity of demand is very important. So these are the three broad categories of elasticity. We will discuss about all these types of elasticity one by one. Number one is price elasticity of demand. Here, price elasticity of demand refers to the change in demand if any responsiveness change in demand occurs due to percentage change in price, that is called price elasticity of demand. So, price elasticity of demand is a measurement of the change in demand for a commodity or goods and services in relation to change in its price. It means when a commodity's demand varies due to change in the price of the commodity, that is called price elasticity of demand. In other words, we can say that price elasticity of demand refers to the responsiveness degree of change in quantity demanded due to change in its price, and it is calculated by uh, given formula like this. Elasticity of demand can be calculated by using this formula: percentage change in demand, if this is divided by percentage change in price, then we can calculate or estimate elasticity of demand or price elasticity of demand. So price elasticity of demand can be calculated by using this formula. In other words, we can use this formula in other way: delta Q upon delta P into P by Q. Here percentage change in demand is known as the change in demand like delta Q, and percentage change in price refers to delta P. And if there is a ratio, if we take the ratio of percentage change in demand and percentage change in price, then we can estimate price elasticity of demand. Its other formula is ED. E is elasticity, D means demand. Elasticity of demand is equals to percentage change in delta Q, means quantity demanded, and percentage change, here change is showing by delta, and quantity demanded is Q, and price is denoted by P. So percentage change is delta and Q is quantity demanded, divided by percentage change is delta and price is P. So if percentage change in quantity demanded is divided by percentage change in price, then we can estimate price elasticity of demand. Now next is ED can be calculated by using first formula like percentage change in quantity demanded upon में percentage change in price, and second formula is ED is equals to delta Q by delta P into P by Q. Here delta Q is showing change in quantity demanded and delta P is showing change in price. P is first price or initial price and Q is initial quantity. So we can calculate elasticity of demand by using these two formulas One is percentage change. If we have given that percentage change in quantity demanded is 10% and percentage change in price is 20%, then we can estimate ED by using first formula, that 10% divided by 20, and we can get the answer of 0.5. And 0.5 is that elasticity of demand is not perfectly elastic, not perfectly inelastic. It is less than 1. If answer is come at below 1, that will be called less than 1 elastic demand. If answer is exact 1, then unitary elastic demand. And if answer is 0, it means the demand is perfectly inelastic. And if answer is infinity, it means demand is perfectly elastic. In case of infinity, demand will be perfectly elastic. So we can estimate elasticity of demand by using these two formulas. Other formula is, if two prices and two quantities are given, then we can use delta Q by delta P into P by Q. Next is degrees of price elasticity of demand. Price elasticity of demand has 5 degrees. These 5 degrees are: number 1 is perfectly elastic demand. Second degree is perfectly inelastic demand. Third is unitary elastic. Fourth is relatively elastic or less than unitary elastic. Fifth is relatively elastic, means more than unitary elastic, ED will be greater than 1. And if demand is relatively inelastic, it means demand will be less than 1. So, how we can define these 5 degrees of elasticity of demand or price elasticity of demand? Number 1, in case of perfectly elastic demand, if demand is perfectly elastic, it means that demand can increase or decrease, but price will remain same or constant. In this case, diagram will be horizontal or parallel to the x-axis. And if demand curve is horizontal or parallel to the x-axis, then demand will be called perfectly elastic demand. In case of this, elasticity of demand will be equals to infinity. Infinity means demand can be changed by so many times, but price can't change. If price remains constant, only demand can change. That is the case of perfectly elastic demand. Horizontal line representing perfectly elastic demand situation. Second is perfectly inelastic demand. Here it is clear by its name that this is perfectly inelastic. Inelastic means when demand can't change. If price varies, but demand will not affected by price, if demand will not affected by income, and if demand is not affected by price of related goods, then demand will be called inelastic demand. Here in this diagram is vertical or parallel to the y-axis. Here quantity demanded is constant, but price is changing. If price is changing, either price rise or fall, but demand remains constant and there is no change in demand occurs, that is called perfectly inelastic demand. And in case of this, demand will be equals to 0. ED is equals to 0 in case of perfectly inelastic demand. And in third case, unitary elastic. In case of this unitary elastic, if the percentage change in quantity demanded is just same as percentage change in price, it means there is no difference in change in price level and change in quantity level. If percentage change in price is 10%, if percentage change in quantity demanded is also 10%, and if we divide 10% by 10%, then what will we get? 1. So unitary elastic demand shows that the percentage change in quantity demanded and the percentage change in price, if both are equal, there is no difference in between of these two variables, then demand will be unitary elastic. And in this case, demand will be equals to 1. Now, fourth case is relatively elastic. This situation is also called more than unitary elastic. More than one or more than unitary elastic is a situation when the percentage change in quantity demanded is more than the percentage change in price. If price increases less but the quantity demanded changes by more ratio, it is called relatively elastic or more elastic demand. In this case, curve will be more flatter. You know that demand curve generally slopes downward from left to right because demand curve shows inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. So if demand is more than unitary elastic, then demand curve will be downward, but it will be more flatter, not steeper. Because here the percentage change in quantity demanded is more than the percentage change in price. Now fifth is relatively inelastic. This fifth situation, relatively inelastic, is also known as less than unitary elastic. In case of less than unitary elastic, if demand changes less than the change in price, or in other words, we can say that if the percentage change in quantity demanded is less than the percentage change in price, that is the situation of less than unitary elastic. In this case, elasticity of demand will be less than 1 and demand curve will be more steeper rather than flatter. So these are the 5 degrees of price elasticity of demand. One is perfectly elastic. In this case, diagram will be horizontal line, ED will be infinity. In second case, perfectly inelastic, diagram will be vertical parallel to the y-axis and ED will be equals to 0. And in case of unitary elastic, demand curve generally slopes downward and normal demand curve we will draw, and if there is a percentage change in demand and percentage change in price, the ratio in between of these two variables, if both are equal, then we will get answer 1. That is called unitary elastic demand. And in case of relatively elastic or more than unitary elastic, demand curve slopes downward, but it will be more flatter because there is a in more percentage change in quantity demanded will occur due to less percentage change in price. If price change is less but the quantity demanded changes more, that is called relatively more elastic. In this case, ED will be greater than 1. And relatively inelastic situation refers to if elasticity of demand is less than 1, if the percentage change in quantity demanded is less than the price change, then curve will be steeper and ED will be less than 1. So these are the 5 degrees of price elasticity of demand. Now next is income elasticity. Generally it measures the response of change in quantity demanded due to change in income of the consumer. And how we can denote it by this income elasticity of demand? Income elasticity of demand is denoted by EY. Here E is income, Y is income and E refers to elasticity. So EY is income elasticity of demand and its formula is Percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in income of the consumer. It refers to the different quantities of commodities or services which consumers will buy at different levels of income, other things remaining constant. It expresses the relationship between income and quantity demanded. We know that there are three types of commodities which is affected by the level of income. And these three types of commodities are normal goods, inferior goods, and luxuries, necessities goods or luxuries goods. We can classify the categories of goods into three main different categories. One is normal goods. Normal goods or comfortable goods are those goods which are highly demanded at higher level of income and lower demanded at lower level of income. Normal goods demand is directly related with level of income of the consumer. Inferior goods are those goods which are called inferior. Inferior means less qualitative product. If our income falls, then we will demand more for inferior products. And if our demand rises, then we will demand for normal goods or superior goods, not inferior goods. So there is an inverse relationship between demand for inferior goods and income of the consumer. And third commodity is necessities goods. Necessities goods are those goods which is very necessary for survival. For example, wheat, rice, sugar, milk, fruits, vegetables, water, etc. These goods are known as necessary goods, and necessary goods demand is not affected by price, not affected by income of the consumer, because necessary goods are very compulsory to buy. And if there is can't if we can't change the demand for necessary products and it is not affected by the level of income of the consumer, that will be called inelastic demand. So income can't influence the demand for necessary product, but income can influence the demand for inferior products, and demand can income can also influence the demand for normal products. So this is known as income elasticity. Next is income elasticity of demand. Income elasticity of demand may be negative, may be positive, and may be zero. Generally, income elasticity of demand measures how demand for a product changes due to change in income of the consumer, or a measure of how demand for a product changes when people's income change. Income elasticity of demand has three types. One is negative income elasticity of demand. Negative income elasticity of demand associated with inferior goods. Inferior goods means, for example, cheap cars. When my income rises, I stop buying cheap cars or cheap products. In this case, demand will be negative and elasticity of demand will be called negative and curve will be downward sloping. If goods are inferior, then there is an inverse relationship between income of the consumer and demand for inferior products. At higher income, inferior products demand will be lower, and at lower income, inferior products demand will be higher. So if there is a negative relationship between income of the consumer and demand for a product, then it will be called negative income elasticity. Second is positive income elasticity. When demand will be positively income elasticity? When demand increases by the same proportion, if income rises, demand for normal goods rises. If income falls, demand for normal goods falls. that is called positive income elasticity of demand. It is associated with luxurious goods. Luxurious goods are normal goods or comfortable goods. For example, when my income rises, I buy more vacations in abroad. I can spend more vacations in abroad. So, demand for product, if any demand for any product increases due to rise in income and falls due to falls in income, that is called positive income elasticity of demand. Third is zero income elasticity. When income elasticity will be zero? These goods are sticky goods, necessary goods, and compulsory goods. For example, electricity, water, salt, cooking oil, and kerosene oil or LPG gas. All these things are necessary. If any increase in price or any increase in income of the consumer, it will not affect it to the demand for these products. So, in case of necessary goods, income can't influence the demand for necessary product. In this case, demand will be called zero. So income elasticity of demand in case of necessary product, it will be zero. In case of luxurious product, it will be positive. And in case of inferior product, it will be negative. These are the three types of income elasticity of demand. Now next is income elasticity of demand can be presented by these different curves. These two are the extreme cases of elasticity of demand. One is perfectly elastic and second is perfectly inelastic. Perfectly elastic and perfectly inelastic, these are the two extreme situations of elasticity of demand. If demand is highly elastic due to change in income of the consumer, then demand curve will be upward sloping. Generally, demand curve slopes downward, but according to the change in income, if demand increases more than the change in income of the consumer, in this case, demand will be called highly elastic and curve will be upward sloping and more flatter. Unitary elastic demand is that demand if the percentage change in quantity demanded is just the same as the percentage change in income of the consumer, then demand will be unitary elastic demand. In this case, demand curve will be 45-degree line and start from the origin. In case of low elastic demand, if percentage change in quantity demanded is less than the percentage change in income of the consumer, then demand curve will be upward, but it will be more steeper rather than flatter. And income elasticity of demand will be less than 1. In fourth case, zero elastic. You know that zero elastic demand, when it occurs due in case of necessary products. So zero elastic demand, in this case, when demand is not affected by the change in level of income of the consumer, in this case, curve will be vertical parallel to the y-axis, and here income elasticity of demand is equals to zero. And in case of negative elastic demand, which occurs in case of inferior products, because when income of the consumer rises, consumer will buy less inferior product, and if income falls, he will buy more inferior products. There is an inverse relationship between income of the consumer and demand for inferior product. That's why demand curve will be downward sloping and income elasticity of demand will be less than zero or negative, because negative is less than zero. So these are the 5 diagrams of income elasticity of demand. Now next is cross elasticity of demand. This is the third type of elasticity of demand. Cross elasticity of demand In short form, we can write CED. C is cross, E means elasticity, D means demand. Cross elasticity of demand measures the responsiveness of change in quantity demanded of X commodity due to change in the price of Y commodity. And these X and Y commodities may be complementary or may be substitutable. There are two types of related goods. One is substitute goods, other is complementary goods. Substitute goods are those goods which demand can change according to the change in price of related products. For example, substitute goods are like tea or coffee. If price of tea rises, then demand for coffee will rise, and if price of tea falls, then demand for coffee will also falls. It means substitute goods are those goods which can use in place of each other. For example, Campa and Pepsi, Mirinda and Fanta. And so, cross elasticity of demand uh, can occur in case of price of related goods. And related goods are maybe substitutable or maybe complementary. Complementary goods are those goods which always use together. For example, car and petrol, pen and refill, needle and thread, camera and reel, etc. If price of one commodity changes or varies, then definitely the demand for its related product will also varies. And cross elasticity of demand generally measure the responsiveness change in one commodity's demand due to change in price of other commodity. So CED, cross elasticity of demand formula is percentage change in quantity demanded of A product due to percentage change in price of B product. With cross price elasticity, we make an important distinction between substitute goods and complementary goods and services. So substitute goods and complementary goods both are known as related goods. And if related goods we include in the estimation of elasticity of demand, it is known as cross elasticity of demand. And we can use the formula that percentage change in quantity demanded of one commodity divided by percentage change in price of other commodity. It may be substitutable or may be complementary, and its other formula is delta qx upon delta py into px upon py upon qx. Here x and y we are taking two different commodities which may be substitutable or may be complementary. Next is types of cross elasticity of demand. Cross elasticity of demand has also three main broader types. These three main types are positive cross elasticity, negative cross elasticity, and zero cross elasticity. When positive cross elasticity will exist in case of substitute goods. You know that substitute goods are those goods which can use in place of each other. If price of one commodity rises, then demand for other commodity or substitute goods will also rise. So, in this case, due to rise in price of tea, if demand for coffee will rise, there is a positive relationship. That's why curve will be upward sloping, and in this case, positively cross elasticity demand will be called. And second thing is negative cross elasticity. Negative cross elasticity generally occurs in case of complementary goods. Complementary goods are those goods which can use always together. Without one thing, other commodity is useless. If you don't have petrol or CNG, then the use of car is useless. You can't use. So, in case of complementary goods, if price of car rises, then demand for petrol will fall. There is a negative relationship between one commodity price and other commodity demand. That's why cross elasticity will be called negative cross elasticity, and curve will be downward sloping. from left to right. And in case of zero cross elasticity, if both goods are not substitutable, not complementary, that type of good is known as unrelated goods. If we demand for books and see the price of cars, there is no relation between the price of car and demand for books. Both goods are not related, not interrelated with each other. They are called unrelated goods. So if goods are unrelated, not related to each other, in this case, cross elasticity of demand will be zero. So these are the three main types of cross elasticity of demand. One is positive cross elasticity, second is negative cross elasticity, and third is zero cross elasticity. Cross elasticity of demand measures the extent to which products are substitute or complementary. Next is types in elasticity of demand. We can express this types of elasticity of demand in four ways, but generally three types are most important, and generally we study about these main three types. One is price elasticity of demand. It can be represented by EP. Here E is elasticity, P is price. And income elasticity of demand is the second type of elasticity of demand. We can represent by EY. E is elasticity, Y is income. And cross elasticity of demand can be denoted by EC, cross elasticity of demand. C is cross and E is elasticity of demand. And if your demand is affected by advertising or publicity expenditures, then it will be called advertising elasticity of demand, because sometimes our demand is affected by more publicity and more advertising. When we see the advertise in TV, newspaper, magazines, and if we want to or willing to buy that commodity, it means our demand is affected by advertising or publicity of that product. So that is called advertising elasticity of demand, and it is denoted by EA. E is elasticity, A is advertising. These are the various types of elasticity of demand. Now next is types of elasticity of demand. We can presented these types of elasticity of demand or degrees of elasticity of demand in a single diagram. We can present 5 degrees of elasticity of demand in a same diagram or in a one diagram. How we can present it? In this figure, here demand is, when demand curve is horizontal. Horizontal means parallel to the x-axis. That is presenting that elasticity of demand is perfectly elastic. And if demand curve is vertical, here D1 is showing perfectly elastic demand, which is horizontal or parallel to the x-axis, and D5 is showing vertical or parallel to the y-axis. It is showing perfectly inelastic demand, and D2 is showing more elastic demand because curve is more flatter and the percentage change in quantity demanded is more than the change in price. So ED will be more than 1. And D3 curve is normal curve, and in the center of less than and more than 1 diagram. So in this case, elasticity of demand will be equals to 1, or unitary elastic demand exist in case of D3 curve. And D4 curve is more steeper, and here the percentage change in quantity demanded is less than the percentage change in price. So in D4 curve, here elasticity of demand will be less than 1. So we can present all these degrees of elasticity of demand in a single diagram in this way. Here we have 5 types of demand: D1, D2, D3, D4 and D5. And these 5 curves are presenting different elasticities of demand. D1 is showing perfectly elastic, ED will be infinity. D2 is showing more than unitary elastic, ED will be greater than 1. D3 is showing a unitary elastic, ED will be equals to 1. D4 is showing less than elastic, ED will be less than 1, and D5 is showing perfectly inelastic, ED will be equals to 0. Next is price elasticity versus income elasticity of demand. What is the difference between price elasticity of demand and income elasticity of demand? Now we have discussed about what is the meaning of price elasticity of demand and what are the various degrees of price elasticity of demand. And we have also discussed about income elasticity of demand. Now we can easily differentiate between these two concepts. Now, what is price elasticity of demand? Price elasticity of demand measures the percentage change in quantity demanded against the price of that product. And income elasticity of demand refers to or measures the change in quantity demanded against consumers' income level. Second point is, in case of price elasticity of demand, here the relationship between demand and price, mainly both are related, and we know that both are inversely related always. General relationship between price and quantity demanded is adverse or inverse, although there are some exceptions. And general relationship between income and quantity demanded is always positive. There are some also exceptions, but income and quantity demanded are generally positively related. Now the difference the third point is that in case of price elasticity of demand, product can be categorized as elastic or degrees can be classified as elastic, less than elastic, more than elastic, or perfectly elastic or perfectly inelastic. And in case of income elasticity of demand, products are inferior, normal, luxuries, or necessaries. In case of inferior, income elasticity will be negative. In case of luxuries or normal, income elasticity will be positive. And in case of necessities, income elasticity will be 0. Next is classification. And if ED is 0, that is called perfectly inelastic demand. And perfectly inelastic demand shows that quantity demanded is completely insensitive to the price. And if elasticity lies in between of 0 and 1, that is 0 and minus 1, that is called inelastic demand. In this case, quantity demanded is relatively insensitive to price. Unitary elastic, in case of this, ED will be equals to 1. And if the percentage change in quantity demanded is just the same as the percentage change in price, that is called unitary elastic demand. And more elastic means when quantity demanded is relatively more sensitive to the change in price, that is more elastic demand. Now next is determinants of price elasticity of demand. What are the main determinants or what are the factors affecting of elasticity of demand? In this case, we will explain all those factors which can influence our elasticity of demand. First point is nature of the commodity. Nature of the commodity tells us that the product may be necessary, product may be normal, inferior, and luxuries, etc. If product is necessary, then demand will be inelastic, and if product is or commodity is luxurious, then demand will be more elastic. So nature of commodity affects elasticity of demand. And nature of commodity, it may be a necessary product and it may be comfortable products. If products are necessary, demand can't change, demand will be perfectly inelastic. And if product is luxurious or comfortable product or normal goods, then demand will be more elastic. Second is availability and proximity of substitutes. It means if in market there are so many substitute products are available, it means our demand can change. If price of one commodity increases, then we can demand more for other commodity. If demand can change, demand will be more elastic. If demand can't change, demand will be less elastic or inelastic. So if there is a large number of substitute products are available in the market, then consumers' demand will be more elastic. If a commodity can be put to more than one use, it would be relatively more elastic. 3 points, but there are 8 factors or 8 points which can affect the elasticity of demand. Number one is nature of the commodity. Nature of the commodity, we know that if product is essential or necessary or compulsory for our survival, then such goods demand is inelastic. Then demand for good will be more elastic. Second is income of the consumer. If consumer spend very less amount or less proportion of his income on a commodity, then demand of such commodity is inelastic. For example, we spend very less proportion of our income on newspaper, toothpaste, matchbox, candle, etc. If any particular change occurs in the price of these commodities, then our demand will not change. So if we are spending very less proportionate of our income on these such commodities, then demand will be relatively inelastic or will not change. But if we spend a very huge proportion of our income or huge part of our income for the commodity, then its demand will be called elastic. Next is substitute. If there is more available or close substitutes are available in the market, then demand will be more elastic. But if there is no close substitutes are available in the market, then demand will be less elastic. No close substitute, less elastic. More close substitutes are available, more elastic. Fourth is habit of the consumer. If consumer is habitual and if consumer has a habit to use that product or commodity, then either price rise or fall, income rise or fall, demand will not change. In this case, demand will be inelastic. So if goods are related to the taste and preferences of the consumer, then demand of such good is inelastic and vice versa. If commodity is not related to our taste and preferences, if we are not habitual to any particular product, then our demand can change, and in this case, demand will be more elastic. Next is several uses of commodity. Some goods can be used for multiple purpose, for satisfying unlimited wants, and we can alternatively use that commodities. If goods are of multi-purpose, then its demand will be relatively more elastic. But if it is used for single purpose, its demand will be inelastic. So several use of commodity also affects the elasticity of demand. Demand, if product can be used only for single purpose, demand will be less elastic. And if product can be used for multiple purpose, then demand will be more elastic. Sixth point is postponement. Postponement means if consumer can postpone his demand and he has not necessarily to buy that commodity at a particular time, it means demand can be postponed for future. It means demand is more elastic. If our demand can't postpone for future, like food demand, water demand, salt demand, milk demand, can't be postponed for future, that type of demand is called inelastic demand. So if consumer can postpone the need of goods, then its demand is elastic. But if they can't be postponed, then the demand will be inelastic. Seventh point is price level. If the commodities are of low price range, and high price range. Demand for these goods remains always inelastic. You know that high price products and low price products, because high products demand always remains constant or inelastic, and low price products demand also remains constant or inelastic. Because in case of very rich people, nothing is impossible to buy, and in case of very poor people, nothing is possible to buy. Demand will remain always inelastic. But for middle class people, demand remains always elastic. So at very higher price level and at very lower price level, demand generally remains inelastic. But if they are of middle price range, then demand will be more elastic. And the last point is time period. You know that according to Marshall, time period is classified into three main categories. One is market period, and second is short period, third is long period. Market period is known as that period in which we can't change. Shorter period is that period where we can change only variable factors but not fixed. And long period is very broader time period, longer time period. In this, all factors can easily change, our demand can easily change. So in shorter time period, there is no chance to change. But in longer time period, there is a more chance to change. So when there is no chance to change, demand will be inelastic. And if there is a more chance to change, then demand will be more elastic. So these are the determinant factors of price elasticity of demand. And these factors are nature of the commodity, income of the consumer, substitute products, habits of the consumer, several use of the commodity, postponement, price level, and time period. Next is point elasticity of demand. How we can measure point elasticity of demand? These are the measuring methods of elasticity of demand. Point elasticity of demand is that elasticity of demand where we can measure or estimate elasticity of demand with the help of a specific point on the demand curve instead of over a range of it. It uses the same formula as the general price elasticity of demand measures, but we can take information from the demand equation to solve the change in values instead of actually calculating a change given 2 points. If we take straight line demand curve, in between of this straight line demand curve, elasticity of demand will be equals to 1, and above this point, ED will be greater than 1. Below this point, ED will be less than 1. At on x-axis, ED will be 0, and on y-axis, if we take any point, then demand will be perfectly elastic or infinity. So we can estimate elasticity of demand on a given single demand curve or straight line demand curve in 5 ways. Here elasticity of demand may be equals to 1, less than 1, more than 1, unitary, elastic, infinity, or inelastic. Elasticity can be measured with the help of total expenditure. Total expenditure we can calculate by multiplying price and quantity. Here elasticity of demand may be more than 1, less than 1, or equals to 1. So price increase will increase total expenditure. If there is an increase in price, then definitely total expenditure will rise. If price falls, then total expenditure will also fall. If there is a positive relationship between price and total expenditure, then ED will be equals to then ED will be less than 1. If there is a negative relationship between price and total expenditure, then ED will be more than 1. And if there is no change in total expenditure, either change in price of the commodity and demand for the commodity, but there is no change in total expenditure, in this case, ED will be unitary elastic. Like for example, here price is 1052 and total expenditures are 80, 100 and 120. Due to fall in price, total expenditure is rising. There is an inverse relationship between price and total expenditure. So ED will be more than 1. When price falls but total expenditure remains constant, like 100, in this case, ED will be equals to 1. And if price falls like 10, 5, 2, but total expenditure is 150, 180, due to fall in price, total expenditure is also falling. There is a positive relationship between price and total expenditure, then ED will be less than 1. We can show these three types of elasticity of demand with the help of this one single diagram. In first case, ED will be less than 1. After that, ED will be equals to 1. And um, from T point to B point, ED will be more than. Method is also very important point, very important method of measuring elasticity of demand. When we want to estimate elasticity of demand at the given 2 points, not only a single point, then we can use this midpoint method or midway method or arc method. Its formula is delta Q upon delta P into P1 plus P0 upon Q1 plus Q0. So elasticity of demand, if we want to estimate on the given demand curve at 2 points, then we will use this midpoint method or midway method or arc method, and its formula is delta Q by delta P into P1 plus P0. P1 is new price and P0 is initial price. Upon make Q1 is new quantity and Q0 is initial quantity. Next is importance of cross elasticity of demand. You know that income elasticity of demand, cross elasticity of demand, and price elasticity of demand is very important concept, and its importance is for all people, either it may be businessman, consumer, producer. So in case of complementary goods, substitute goods, if you want to change the effect of these price of related goods on demand, then we must have to know about cross elasticity of demand. And it helps in demand forecasting, it helps in measuring interdependence of price and commodity. Now, significance of price elasticity, it is very important uh, in making of fiscal policy, in making of public utilities, if we want to determine the wage level, and if it can be used in international trade, and it can be explained of paradox of plenty in agriculture sector. Now we can conclude from the today's session that we have discussed all types of elasticity of demand, like income elasticity of demand. It measures how much the quantity demanded responds to change in consumer's income. Cross elasticity of demand measures how much change in quantity demanded of one good respond to the price of other good. And price elasticity of demand measures how much quantity demanded changes due to change in price of the product. So we have discussed about all the concepts of elasticity of demand and its various degrees and its determinant factors of demand. In next session, we will discuss about other topic, consumer behavior. This topic is completed now. Thank you.